There we go. We're live. We're live and being recorded. Brilliant, brilliant. All is good. All is good. Excellent, excellent. Oh, maybe not live yet. It still says redirecting. Oh, wonder why. Oh well. Sure why it's taking so long. Hmm. Oh, I have to assume it's live. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good mornings as well. Let's let's see what's going on. Let's see what's going on. It amazes me how one would think that technology does the same thing every day. But nope, it doesn't. Oh, it says live. Yeah, well, I'm live, but I'm getting the different message from what I normally get. It's just intriguing, and reminds me always to be careful of expectations and assumptions. We assume that simply because the technology is going to do the same thing over and over again, but it doesn't. I see this every day. I see how technology doesn't uh, act and behave consistently as one would think it does. It's just absolutely fascinating. It's a good lesson to learn. Don't expect things to be the same all the time because they're not necessarily, right? Oh, okay. Very good. Actually, I did have something and I wanted to talk about. That's been on my mind. And that is frame of perception. Frame of perception is very, very, very powerful because what this means is, at least the way I define it, it's a power term in my dictionary of power. Right. So for me, frame of perception is that which influences and shapes and determines our perception according to the framework within which we view it. Right. So when let's say somebody's saying something to you, yes. Ah, brilliant, Norma. Hello, 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 Norma. Hello, Norma. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I love you, Norma. I'm just always happy that you're here. Always happy that you're here. And again, comments or no comments doesn't matter. I'm just happy that you're here. This always makes me happy. It's really a joy. So frame of perception really makes a big difference. Yes. And because it can completely determine how we understand something to be, right? And what we think it is. So a frame of perception is like filters, but more encompassing, right? One moment here. Take some vitamins. Frame of perception affects not only how we perceive something, but how we understand it, how we feel it, our emotional reactions, our emotional responses, all because we're looking at something within a particular framework. Yes. All right. So somebody says something to me, and I take it, and let's say I'm assuming that they are being critical of me. Right. That's the frame of perception now. So now I hear what's being said as if it is negatively intended. It's intended to what? To criticize me, to pull me down. Is that's that hierarchy thinking, yes? But but what's the alternative that it could be? Right? Now we live in a society and a culture worldwide that's based on the superiority paradigm. Yes. And that superiority paradigm, it's all about hierarchy, dominance, your position in the pecking order, being better than somebody else. And in order to be better, you pull people down, right? And so on. This is the system that we've grown up in and that we live in, right? And it's a big deal. We have to be aware of this. But not everybody acts according to that system. We don't always notice it because yes, Norma, absolutely. It's a huge deal. We don't always notice this because our frame of perception has been shaped by this perpetualness of this paradigm. That's what a paradigm is. It's pervasive, it's there, it's all the time. So we're not even consciously aware that we are assuming others are doing what's typically being done. And also, many people will behave according to the superiority paradigm simply because they don't feel like they have a choice, right? They feel like they have to compete, otherwise you end up at the bottom, and like with a lions competing over the carcass. Yeah, if you the lion at the bottom of the pecking order, well, you could go without food or get very little. That's not cool, right? And this is the fear that drives the superiority paradigm and behavior within it. But what the superiority paradigm doesn't realize is, hey, we're not competing for limited resources anymore. There's more than enough for everybody, right? And they don't also realize that through collaboration, you get so much more. Yes. I mean, if those lions collaborated, they just go and kill another zebra, and then there's more than enough for everybody, right? But they're only thinking me, 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 right? I need to eat. I'm hungry. And when I'm full, well, too bad for you. Yeah. It's completely idiotic, this competition mentality, right? It's a terrible mindset. You see, it's limited, it's wasteful, and it's ultimately self-destructive. Yeah, it's very foolish. So you weakening the whole tribe with this mindset. Whereas if they collaborated, they'd be, and you can see this in the wild dogs, African wild dogs. Yeah? They're the most successful hunters in Africa. Why? Because they collaborate. I mean, they're a fraction of the size of lions and smaller than hyenas also, yet they are way more successful than either of those. And by the way, contrary to popular opinion, hyenas do hunt. Yes, they also scavenge a lot, and so do lions. Right? They're just more known for it, but they both hunt and scavenge. Anyway, and just a little bit beside the point there. Hyenas also a matriarchal society, which is very fascinating. Yeah, but the same dominance applies, right? In hyenas, the females are bigger and the males are the ones who cow her and are subservient and all this. The same nonsense, right? And that's good to be aware of. Superiority paradigm is not gender specific. Yeah, it just happens to be so. It's usually the case, but it's not always the case. Again, assumptions, expectations, right? So this is very key. But I want to get back to, it's part of our frame of perception, is this point of expectations and assumptions. If we assume an intent and a motivation, there is our frame of perception, right? So typically, yes, people go about and they want to be dominant and either push you down or pull you down, right? To improve their position. Yeah. It's like, come on, really? Seriously? You think you've got to be better, superior, you've got to shine. And part of this nonsense is to get the approval of others. Huh? You want to be better than them, but you're dependent on their approval. How does that even make any kind of sense whatsoever? Yes? It's just completely crazy. Plus, if you want to have strength and solidity and power and all this is your goal, aren't you just making yourself vulnerable to the opinions of others by looking for their approval? It's an idiotic system. It's completely and utterly idiotic. I call it a no possibility of win system. They're all about winning, but even if you actually succeed in getting what you want, you end up losing. Yeah, because it's just idiocy like this. You see, you get to the top, and now you depend on everybody's approval, and you're vulnerable. It's just absolute madness. Anyway, I want to get back to frame of perception. So when we look at this frame of perception, we say, wait a second. I'm assuming, I'm taking for granted that somebody is coming at me with a particular motivation, right? And that's affecting my frame of perception, right? And I cannot possibly see it because I assume this is what everybody does. Here's my starting point that I came with in the beginning, right? To assume that my software is always going to be doing the same thing. Now, I don't, because, that thing with that I think it was Einstein or somebody says, that if you do the same thing over and over expecting a different result, this is the definition of madness. Well, I got news for you, Einstein or whoever said that. Well, when it comes to software and computers, especially, and particularly with people, yes, you can do the same thing over and over and expect different result, and you will get that different result. Yes, it's not madness. It's actually reality. Now, it depends on circumstance and appropriateness, but there's many, many instances where you do this and you do get different results, right? So many times something doesn't work on the computer, I just do it again, and wow, okay, a couple of times later it starts to work, right? Because we assume that it's the same, but it's not. You do something, and that doing changes the entire environment, and then you do again, and there's a little change. So same thing with people, right? And look at our chapter with Boynal. Yes, he's saying the same thing, but every time there's a slight change. And Biella knows this. So she's creating an environment for him to repeat because she knows that even when you repeat, just the fact that you are repeating changes, right? Now, he doesn't say it exactly the same way, but let's assume he did say the exact same thing. After saying this a couple of times, what is going to be different? This is what whoever said that, Einstein, whoever, didn't realize. Yes, what is going to be different? His awareness that he's saying the same thing, that there's repetition. This is now an additional thing. After saying it once, he never had an awareness that he was repeating. After saying it twice or three times, right? And Biella's creating the environment for him to do this, right? After three or four times, or five, six, how many times it takes, at some point he's going to become aware that he's repeating. That awareness is now an additional factor that changes everything. See? So when we get into real sophisticated understanding and awareness and strategy, we start to think a bit more, right? And there's that meta logic. In regular logic, what Einstein says, yes, it makes sense, yeah? But with meta logic, no, there's more to it, right? So we have to really be careful. But this is particularly important when it comes to the frame of perception that is connected to intent. Yes, if we assume that the intent of others is to be superior relative to us, right? At least when we assume that everybody has this intent, that's problematic. Yes, because not all do. Now, most people have it in some way, but some people are really nice people, good people, wonderful, beautiful people, people like Norma, in other words, right? Not that Norma necessarily does this. I'm just using you as an example of a good person, Norma, and a wonderful, awesome person, right, with lots of goodness. But many good, nice people, especially if they're sweet and kind and gentle, they find themselves forced to participate in the superiority paradigm. Otherwise, they just kind of get trampled on, right? They don't have the skills or the abilities to deal with it in other ways. They don't have the the strategies that the new nobility have developed for dealing with this, right? So now we have to say, wait a second, what else can we do? Yeah. First of all, break free from expectations and assumptions. Because an expectation and assumption, what do? They create a frame of perception. And frames of perception tend to limit us. We tend to see things only in that particular way. And then we just hear and we assume because of that, right? Because we are hearing now in that frame of perception, and what's said now has an emotional effect on us. That emotional effect emphasizes what we hear, the brain gets rewired, and now we absolutely believe it's a fact that happened. It's not a fact at all. We created this fact through our frame of perception, right? We created a reality for ourselves that to us now is a fact, but it isn't actually a fact, right? So now we go back to that original statement of whatever somebody said to us, to say, let's assume they say, I don't know, I can't think of of example right now that can go any way. Um, well, let's just say they said, impatience is a very detrimental quality. Let's making a statement, right? I mean, this is. But if you have the frame of perception that, but why are they saying this? Well, duh. Well, they're looking to put you down. They must, they're telling you you're impatient and being impatient is wrong and you're full of nonsense and you're bad and wrong. And in other words, they're criticizing you for being impatient. It's not what they said, right? They didn't say you're wrong to be impatient. They didn't say you're bad to be impatient. They just said impatience is not a good quality. It's not a desirable quality, right? It's making a statement of what to them is a fact, a self-evident fact, right? Okay, I mean, if you really think that's not so, I'd like to hear why, but most people would agree, and I can't see how you cannot. But, in my humility, I assume there may be some time, right? That it just, and it's by implication in general, right? I mean, I guess if you, trying to get out of a fire or something, then to be patient to get out quickly, all right, maybe. I don't know. But impatience is moving at an inappropriately slow pace. Yes. So it's inappropriate slowness. And then whenever you have appropriateness, it's always conditional, circumstantial. Anyway, so my point is now, if you reconsider, right, you got all upset and you're feeling criticized because the person said impatience is an undesirable quality. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't even directed at you, but you've taken it personally, and now you've made a whole thing about it. And the end is they being nasty to you, they're being mean to you, and they're doing nothing of the sort. They're just making a point. Now, maybe they have noticed some impatience in you relative to them, and they're not trying to teach you or tell you, but they are just saying, "Hey, you know what?" They're trying to gently bring this factor in that your particular impatience is causing a problem. Right now, if you are in that mindset of that frame of perception, right, where I'm being attacked, and you start defending. And when you start defending, you're now interested in more defending your ego and your position and all of this stuff, right? But you're not actually listening to what's being said. Yeah. Whereas if you switch this and you get into that self honesty mindset and also the mindset of actually listening, capital H hearing, and again, this chapter that we're busy with Boynal, all about capital H hearing, right? And say, what did they actually say? They just made a statement of fact, right? Impatience is an undesirable a trait or undesirable quality. Oh, is that true? Yes, it's true. Does this apply to me? Well, actually, yes, it does apply to me, and yes, I do agree. Right? So then, at least from an aspirant or a new noble's point of view, or somebody who just wants to learn and improve, the very next question is, what can I do about it? Yeah. Now you're on a whole different track. Furthermore, right, if you just assume they just popped out of their mouth randomly, okay, that's how you can. But what if you assume that there's a good intent behind it? Yeah. Oh, well, maybe they're talking about themselves and they just but shy to talk about their own impatience. So they're saying this to open up a conversation and a dialogue, right? Because they don't want to say, hey, you know what, I've got impatience because, well, you're involved in the hierarchy paradigm. And if they say this, then it becomes a dominant game, and then so they're trying to gently open this up. Okay, I'm just saying, I'm just creating different possibilities of how things are motivated, and this is all part of capital H hearing, right? You're trying to hear where the other's at. Now, of course, when you get into that frame of perception, it closes your hearing down. You get in your bubble, and then that's all gone, right? And it's too late then, right? So you want to try and prevent this. So what we want to try and do is when we hear something, assess it on its own merits, right? Just that statement on its own, without assuming any implications, right? Impatience is an undesirable quality. Yeah, okay. And so what? You could say. I mean, yeah, duh, right? Okay, that's fine. That's all that it warrants and merits. But we are so in the habit of, at least with superiority paradigm, of being so defensive all the time that when somebody says something that they're just making an observation, right? We take it as like, oh, it must be, there must be more to it, there must be something, right? And so our suspicions start to run away with us. But what if they have a really profound motivation, which is to, like I said, to bring this topic into discussion because they're struggling a bit with their own impatience and they see it in you and they say, well, you know what, maybe we can work on this together. Yeah. So, frame of perception. See, now you've got a whole different paradigm. Now you can say, yeah, I know. It's like, dang it. And then the other person says, I've been thinking about it. And actually, you know what? I've got an idea here, right? So, and I say, well, you know what? I don't like to be arrogant. This is something that I may be impatient, and yes, you can fault me for being impatient if that's what you want to do. I mean, we all have stuff to learn, but okay, never mind. Let's just say, yeah, you can fault me for being impatient, but you can't fault me for being arrogant. I just absolutely hate being arrogant, and this is something I'm totally against, and I make every effort not to be arrogant. So I said, wow, I'm not motivated to be patient, but I am motivated to not be arrogant. I'm going to be sneaky. What if I connect the two? What do you mean you can connect the two? Well, think about it a little bit. If we're impatient, is it not that we're expecting the world to operate according to our timetable? Oh my God. Oh my God. Yes, you're right. That's exactly what I'm doing too. And I'm just like you too. I don't want to be arrogant either, but that's totally arrogant. That's completely and utterly arrogant. Oh my God. I can't be impatient anymore now, because if I'm impatient, that means I'm arrogant. Oh wow. Oh wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See? I'm making the point not about impatience or learning. I'm making a point about frame of perception. Change the frame of perception. You change the dialogue. You change what follows. You change what you hear. And this is incredibly powerful, right? If we, and in this, sorry, let me start again. In this chapter that we're reading now, if we had come into it with a limited frame of perception, in the first thing that Boynal says, and then when he repeats it again, it's like, oh shit, I just got an idiot here who doesn't know what he's doing. He's in his own bubble, and he's in a loop, and he's blind, he's stuck, he's closed, and he's not hearing what we're saying. He's just repeating his stuff, right? Because he repeats after uh, Biella says, right? So if we're in the frame of perception of not being open and not understanding capital H hearing, and not assuming there's more, et cetera, et cetera, you're going to just shut down the conversation and say, all right, well, you know what, I'm wasting my time here. Yeah. And you say, sorry, I can't really help you. I don't have access. I mean, I don't know if you're looking for money or visas or whatever. I can't help you with any of that. Okay. Shut down the conversation. But that's not the case here, right? So my point is, when we make this effort to not be limited to a particular frame of reference, because to switch one for the other is equally, it doesn't matter whether it's a negative one, you start off with an overwhelmingly positive one. Either way, you're limiting your perception, because if you start off with positive and the person is, let's say they're trying to con you or something, you might not see that, right? And get into trouble, right? So there are strategies for dealing with this too, especially when it comes to commitments of any kind. I mean, I give people the benefit of the doubt, but when it comes to I've actually got to commit to something, then is when I start to say, well, maybe whatever, right? And then if I do commit, I'm saying, well, if this is a con, am I happy to lose my money here? Have I done my due diligence? Have I been impeccable? Okay, if I have, and it turns out to be so, and I couldn't see it, well, all right, so be it. So then I'm prepared for the loss, right? And it doesn't matter, right? So we can be strategic on this. But the point is, and typically, if you then ask those questions at that point of commitment, am I willing to take this chance? Very often you'll say no, right? Now, when it comes to relationships, and not just being conned, but relationships, often we aren't being conned intentionally. But a lot of times when it comes to people getting into relationships, they don't show who they truly are because, well, they feel like they're not going to be accepted, and rightly so. So they present a false front, right? Which is, of course, again, honesty. It's stupid because inevitably your relationship is going to crash or likely to crash when people do discover that you aren't who you were supposed to be, right? Now, all right, sometimes people stick it out, make the best of it, but that's why there's such a high rate of breakup and divorce because people simply aren't honest to start with, right? Save yourself a lot of trouble, be honest. So this is a very important point here that if we don't communicate and aren't open, right, to these and understand frames of perception, we can get ourselves into bubbles and limit not only our interactions with others, but limit the value that we can see. Like in that statement, right, with impatience is an undesirable quality. If we take that from the frame of perception of negativity and dominance and hierarchy, we don't ever get to that discussion of how to deal with it, right? Where the intent was, hey, let's have a discussion about this. Yeah. I mean, the person might even say, hey, you know what? I'm keen to discuss impatience. They might just say that. And if you're all sensitive about your impatience, they're looking to put me down, they're looking to be negative, and you don't want to go anywhere near this discussion. See? So how does somebody now discuss a sensitive topic with you if you're not open to alternative motivations other than this dominance, hierarchy, negativity, bullying, putting you down, and all this, right? See, it's very important. So we have to have this ability to be open, which means sometimes we have to make ourselves a bit vulnerable, which is why I responded to a post the other day in group where somebody said, you must be secret about everything, must keep everything a secret. I said, no, it must be open with everything. And then as they said, well, they were meaning like about bank accounts and stuff. Well, in a self-improvement, self-awareness thing, this is, you would assume that you're talking about, I mean, it's a reasonable assumption to say that you're talking about personal stuff, right? Not that kind of personal stuff like your bank accounts. I mean, this is like, come on. Yes, they're criminals, duh. But we're talking about being secretive about stuff like, well, I'm impatient and I'm going to hide it and cover it. That stuff always comes out. You can't hide stuff like that, right? Like I was explaining, anybody with any skill at capital H hearing and perception and understanding of psychology, they can figure out what's going on inside you simply from how you say things, the pattern of things, what you don't say by omission, etc., etc. Right? There's very many ways to know people without them saying it, right? I hear people's secrets all the time. I'd be horrified, many of them, all right, if I were to actually share that with them. They don't even realize that they give it away. So don't have secrets. It's a waste of time, right? So honesty is so important in all relationships. Absolutely. And especially Norma. You emphasized all. Now pay attention there, anybody watching this, right? Why does Norma emphasize all? Because she's including the relationship with yourself and with the universe, with God, with Allah, Buddha, Krishna, whoever. Yes? All relationships, all of them. Yes, is very, 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 very powerful, very important, particularly self honesty. If you have no self honesty, you cannot possibly learn. Because if you're not honest about what you need to learn, if you're not honest about things like, well, your again, I don't even like to use this word, and I'm not going to use it. It starts with an F, the two of them, right? One longer than the other. Um, Failings and flaws. I don't want to use that, right? Or inadequacies. None of that. Don't think that way. But if we're not honest that we need to learn, how are we going to learn, right? So if I'm all hung up about having uh, problems, wrong stuff is wrong with me and all this, right? And I can't acknowledge this. And I see these as like to have impatience. Oh, it's an awful truth and I can't face it. I can't deal with it. I don't want to even go there. Come on, man. If you just turn it around and you say, yes, it's something that I need to learn. Like everything in life, I had to learn it at some point. I didn't come into the world with it. I started up as a baby and all I did was complain. That was it. That's how I got what I wanted by complaining. I was rewarded for complaining. I complained and I got fed or changed or whatever, right? That's it. So I was rewarded for complaining. But then I learned that that system doesn't work, right? I had to find a different system. Well, the system of the superiority paradigm and being all defensive about stuff that you don't know, that doesn't work either because it blocks you from learning. Yeah. So we've got to start and say, new system. Let's be open. Say, yes, I'm a bit impatient. Oh, okay, I've got to figure this out. I've got to learn on it. What can I do? Do you have any ideas? I said, well, I'm also impatient, but you know what? When two people start to discuss things, you get 1 + 1 equals more. Yes, and maybe somebody's got an idea, like in this case now, right? I have ridiculous patience. I'm saying this without any ego or anything like that. No false modesty holding me back. I'm just being totally honest. I have ridiculous. You can ask anybody who knows me. I have ridiculous patience, not just regular patience, ridiculous patience. Why? Because I figured out what I said earlier about impatience. I have excessive humility, and I'm very afraid of being egotistical. It's a real stress for me. It's a real issue. So being arrogant is like just like this is a horror, right? So when I connected and associated and said, yeah, but isn't impatience just arrogance? Oh my God, that's when I could not be impatient anymore. It's just not possible, right? Plus, from a way of impeccability point of view, if this is a program I'm going to be sharing, how can I possibly be impatient And how can I possibly not be patient? I have to apply the stuff if this is what I'm sharing, right? And saying this is, it's like the, right? So I use that as a leverage, right? If I am maybe tempted to be a bit impatient, right? Or whatever, right? So it's about leverage. I use that strategy of leverage. I don't just use it in this case, I use it in everything, right? Self leverage. When you are self honest, you are able to self leverage yourself, right? And you're able to use these different factors. Now, right, it's a complicated topic. It gets into real sophisticated understanding of psychology, and this is why we do programs like Way of Impeccability, so that you can have the time and space to get into depth of it. Now, also something I want to just emphasize is, since I'm talking about doing programs, right? Way of Impeccability is not like a regular program where you just listen to stuff and you sit there and you go, yeah, 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 okay. And, maybe you get a test and you answer questions about it. That's all about information. Yeah. Acquisition of information doesn't really help us, doesn't really help us to change. Only thing that helps us to change is practice, application, right? First, you got to apply it. Actually, before that, even, you've got to make it your own. If you don't make it your own, you're doing somebody else's stuff. You're living their life. Yourself just doesn't allow this. You got to make it your own. Even if it's the exact same thing, doesn't matter. You got to make it your own. Once you've made it your own, now you can start to apply it. Application on its own is not enough. You got to practice it, right? So it becomes innate, becomes second nature, automatic. But of course, we also don't want to have it become habitual, because habits are, are behaviors which are automatic unawareness. We don't want that, right? So we're also going to add this to upgrade ourselves to say, yes, I want it to be innate, but I want it to also be deliberate and conscious and aware at the same time, right? Because even though something is 99 times out of 10 effective, the 100th time will kill you. Yeah, if you're not aware, right? So we have to be careful of that. And that's why we make this effort to live deliberately. Well, at least one of the reasons why we're making an effort to live deliberately. When I'm also conscious and deliberate of what I'm doing, I have joy, I have passion, because I'm doing what I want to do. Yes, deliberateness is a great power when it comes to joy. Yes, it changes everything. It's motivating. I'm doing it because I want to do this. Take this point of deliberation, right? Okay, do you want to go to jail, any of you? No, heavy, hard, horrible, maximum security jail. No, none of you want to go to jail. This is horrible. This is like a nightmare. But what about the secret agent? Yes, the undercover secret agent who has to uncover the big, whatever, horrible ring of criminals or something, right? And it's centered in the jail, right? They go undercover because they want to break up that ring. So now they don't mind being in the jail. Yes, it's not fun, but they can endure it. They can get through it, right? Because they have that motivation. They're doing it deliberately. When we do things deliberately, we are able to do so much more, right? We can endure more. But I'm not just saying this, and that's a case where you're looking to deal with something negative. But when you being deliberate about the joys in your life, you enhance the passion likewise, right? So, and the joy. So being deliberate is very powerful. And now when we tie this deliberateness back to frames of perception, start being deliberate about your frame of perception, right? Again, you want to have as broad a frame as possible, or no frame if possible. It's very difficult to have no frame. But if we start off and we say, you know what, instead of me looking at everything through the frame of the superiority paradigm, which is dominance, hierarchy, jockeying for position, bullying, avoiding being bullying, sucking up, all of the stuff that goes with that, right? And assuming that whenever somebody says to me, they're doing two things. They're either trying to pull me down or they're trying to push me down. Wait a second. Are there other options? Is this what Biella is doing? No. You cannot say there's any hint of that in what Biella does. Absolutely not. Right? And she's not even trying to help Boynal. What? What? She really- Oh yeah, pay attention, right? She doesn't assume what Boynal needs to know. This is capital H hearing number one rule. Don't assume. Right? With helping, you have to assume what people know. That's arrogance again, right? So, wow. Okay, can I assist maybe? Yes, possibly. I can share options, which what she does. She shares awareness. Wow. She's not looking to tell him what to do. That's, again, frame of perception, right? She's sharing, 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 sharing. She's not just sharing in a way that says she's sharing choice and option, right? He can take it or leave it to her sharing, right? And at first he doesn't even get what she's saying because he's so used to and is expecting to be told. He wants advice. But Biella knows even if she gives him advice, it doesn't necessarily help him, right? Because when you tell people what to do and they do it, they're doing what you think is right for them. It may or may not be. Yeah. So she's very sophisticated, yes, being exceedingly sophisticated, but he's unable to grasp it because he's got limited frame of perception, right? So when we really look at this very closely, we see that Biella is operating from a point of motivation that's completely outside of Boynal's comprehension. But she has such patience and such kindness and such consideration that she doesn't mind that he doesn't see where she's coming from and that he's unable to appreciate it. She's not in this for appreciation. She's doing it. Why? Because of nobility. She doesn't need to have a reward for her goodness. That's nobility. It's being noble. Yes. Doesn't need a reward. Doesn't need praise. Yeah. She's doing it because she wants to do goodness. And nobility is bonus goodness. She doesn't have to do it. It's over and above. There's no requirement for it, but you do it anyway. This is what nobility is all about, right? So capital H hearing has a very large element of nobleness to it, right? So now we're looking at this whole chapter in a very different frame of perception. Yes, we're looking at Biella's actions, Boynal's actions. Again, let's not assume with Boynal, right, what the issue is. At first we say, but Boynal, you've got a problem, and you're saying the problem, and you're also saying the answer. It's like, duh, you know what you're doing, but yet you don't do it. Why? Right? And it's like, well, it's just being stupid. Whenever we get to an answer where we think that somebody's being stupid, think again. Very few people are deliberately stupid. There's always a reason for their stupidity. Once you know that reason, then, oh, the stupidity kind of goes away, right? So, or at least it changes. So it's very, very powerful. Very, very powerful to understand. Brilliant, brilliant. I hope you're going to stick with us, Norma, and be here. Let me see. Let me just expand this. I'm going to start reading from where we left off yesterday. Ah, it's so wonderful. This frame of perception, it's such a big deal. It's a massive, massive, massive big deal. And it's very good to be aware of, right? You see it just in your everyday life, right? And ask yourself, how much am I being influenced by frame of perception, right? Something becomes viral and you click on it and you, wow, cool. And then why are you saying it's cool or nice or good? Because everybody else has said so? Do you yourself actually inherently think so or not? Right? Oh, 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 well, I was looking at it and I was under this frame of perception that this is awesome and good. So it kind of affected how I perceived it. But now that you mention this and I kind of remove that, when I look at it inherently in itself, well, it's kind of lame actually, or a little bit childish, so it's kind of mean. Yeah. All right. Well, I changed my mind. Right. See, when you start to really look at frame of perception, you realize that so often you subscribe to things simply because the frame of perception, the marketing, the paradigm that it's been put in to, that the frame that it's being presented in is one which says that you should think this is wonderful and good and more. Yeah. It's kind of a manipulation. That's what most advertising is all about. That they create a particular frame of perception, and you look at it through that, right? And then it's artificial, though, right? For the most part, right? You have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. Like there's an ad for a dye for beards, right? And I forget the product now, but I remember when they first started, there was these two baseball, legends, right? Who were watching or recently retired baseball stars. Maybe they were even playing still, right? And one of them had a little bit of gray, and so they're watching this like a video or something of a third guy who goes up to a girl and he says something and they say, "Oh, rejected." Yeah, like being rejected is like this terrible, horrible thing, end of the world scenario. Well, but then of course, and they say, well, now the guy he gets the dye for his beard, he takes the gray out, and now he gets the girl. I mean, it's just the absurdity of it. But they artificially creating an environment in which you must feel bad about having gray in your beard. Well, first of all, they're saying you must feel bad about being rejected. Why? If you go and somebody doesn't, why must you feel bad? It's not what they want, what they like. There may be 100 reasons why you get rejected. Maybe nothing to do with you. They may already be in a relationship that you're not aware of, or they may be, somebody says, "Hey, I want to be celibate," whatever, right? It's just idiotic. It's that insecurity that they are playing on. They're manipulating your insecurity, right? To say, well, but now I don't want to acknowledge that maybe I've got to improve. Oh no, it's because I've got gray in my beard. Ugh, frame of perception. Really terrible. Really, really, really terrible, right? It's a gross manipulation. So when we start to pay attention to this, right, we may buy into that and go and buy the thing. Yeah, really. I mean, it's so childish, that ad. Yet it was a successful ad and it ran for a long time. I mean, seriously, if you're going to be with somebody who's going to reject you because you got gray in your beard, do you really want to be with such a shallow person? And what when they find out that you dye your beard, then what? See, they don't think to step two. Now, not only do you have gray in your beard from their point of view, now that they find out, but you're also kind of a liar in a way by covering it up. You got two strikes against you. You kiss your relationship goodbye. If they were so shallow in the first place, they're going to be just as shallow about doing this, right? And then thirdly, well, this is kind of vanity, isn't it? It goes nowhere. It goes nowhere, right? But we don't think about it. We just accept this, and you watch the ad, and it's like, all right. It's the same thing with, like, I don't know, hair growth thing. Like somehow baldness is this terrible thing. Seriously, it's just manipulation. It's frame of perception, right? It's working on your fears, your insecurities, and your vanities. Don't be any of those things, in other words, and then you won't have any of these problems. All right, let's go to the story. Uh, oh, good. It did save where I was yesterday. Yeah, brilliant. So I'm just making this point again, right? Frame of perception. It changes your reality, right? And we don't realize that because, like I said, when we misperceive something, and especially if it's a negative, and we take it negatively emotionally, that emotion adds to the emphasis. Oh, like they're being mean to me, horrible, blah blah blah, and you feel all bad and horrible. When anything is emphasized, it literally rewires the brain. So now you're rewiring the brain, right, to have this negative belief of this fact that the person was being mean to you when they weren't being mean to you at all or negative towards you. They're actually trying to be considerate and kind and helpful and generous or positive qualities. So we can end up actually getting the very opposite because of a frame of perception. We can create a reality that's not so. And that's a terrible thing, right? Especially if it's an incorrect one, not only incorrect but also negative. Anytime we have incorrectness, it limits us, it flaws us because it affects how we are appropriate, right? So when you want to have, like in any situation, if you have incorrect information, right, data, then that affects your decisions. Like, say a general, right? They get the information from all their spies and whatever. If that information is incorrect, if they trust it to be correct and they make their decisions based on it, well, if it turns out to be incorrect, all people die as a result, all right? So, of course, when we're doing this to ourselves, people don't die, but you can still have very negative consequences. You can kill relationships very quickly in this way, right? So still have death, right? So we have to be very careful when it comes to our frame of perception to make sure that we aren't changing our reality inaccurately. Yeah, very, very powerful, right? All right, so here we were where we started yesterday, right? Biella decided to take a small chance. She wanted to test something, a potential theory. So sorry, Norma, I'm going to screen share again for the videos. Again, if you watch on your big computer, Norma, which I hope you have the speaker connected to. If not, if your daughter couldn't do it for you, send me a photo, Norma, of the back of your computer, and I'll tell you where to plug it in, right? Or what to unplug to plug that in, all right? Or again, if you want to come on Zoom and we can do screen share, I can go through all of it with you. But typically, speakers are very simple to connect, very simple. You typically plug it into, I think it's the blue one, but anyway. blue or pink. It'll have a little thing there that says outgoing, like headphones or speaker, little symbol next to it, right? Anyway, I hope you get that sorted. So because this when you do this on the big computer, it's much easier. Then you can see both my video and what I'm sharing, right? You get more space on the screen. The phone changes it. All right, Biella decided to take a small chance. She wanted to test something, a potential theory. She slipped into the phrasing from the time of the young man and said, then it becomes very cool because we see how all the external stuff is so precisely geared to what exactly we like and have preferences for. It's so awesome. Illumina groaned like a small child at this. She shared the amusement with the group. Aye, it is awesome. And I do realize I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. The universe seeks to know answers to the unknown. Boynal responded. Now, here again, Boynal sounds like what he's saying is very profound. And we have to be careful. Frame of perception once again. Yes. Sometimes people can say these profound things like the universe seeks to know answers to the unknown. Do they really know what that means? Do they really connect it to it? Uh, Not necessarily, right? Sometimes they really do know what they're talking about. Other times they just repeat what they've heard and don't really know what it is, right? So we have to be careful of our frame of perception here. You have to stay open, stay open. We don't know yet which way it is. Does Boynel really know what he's talking about, or does he just know the words? Yeah. So yeah, in this area where I'm at, I mentioned this before. A lot of people who, and you see it in the group too. A lot of people they talk the talk, but where's the application? It's not there, right? So be careful. Biella went back to her normal way of speaking. I know exactly where you are. Internally, I mean. That feeling of dread, of irrationality, of illogic, the going against every known sensibility. Nothing I say is going to help with that feeling. But over time, as we learn to trust, it changes from dread to excitement. What an awesome conversation, by the way. Thanks immensely for messaging me. A huge gift for me. So cool. She threw in the incongruous, so cool. But it seemed to make no difference. All right. So never mind Biella's playing around with the language here to test and see this mystery to her that Boynal is coming from what seems like some other place that's unknown. And she's got a lot of questions here, right? There's a lot of mysteries and anomalies. So she's looking to get some extra information, but also without necessarily affecting the very earnest query and problem that Boynal has, right? So what she says here to him is, she says, I know exactly where you are. She's sharing, right? She's sharing that she understands what he's saying. And not just to say, I understand, right? I mean, she could just say, I know exactly where you are. How does Boynal know she's in the same place, right? So she gives a repeat back. She shares something to back up her statement so that he can know that she knows what she's talking about when she says, I know where you are. Internally, I mean, that feeling of dread. Right? He never mentioned dread, but she's been in that situation that he's in, and she knows that there at least is likely or possibly or probably or, you know, some good likelihood of that feeling of dread being there, also of irrationality, of illogic, right? When you're in a situation like his, these are the feelings that you're having, right? And the going against every known sensibility. This is what he's been asked to do, yes? And nothing I say is going to help with that feeling. But over time, now she's making it as a general statement, right? Because it's not only coming from a personal experience, it's coming from a broader understanding that is supported by that of others and experience, yes, of the experiences of others too. So now she makes it broader, which adds to her communicating to him that she knows what he's talking about, not just personally, but also in a broader sense, right? This is a topic that she's very, very familiar with. Nothing I say is going to help with that feeling. But over time, as we learn to trust, capital T trust, it changes from dread to excitement. Yeah, I mean, if he wants to listen to this, he could say, "How do you mean changes from dread to excitement?" Yes, I mean that's what the new noble would do if they or an aspirant. Say, well, how do you get this right? Right? She's opening a door for him to ask. Yes, or he can think it through to say, "Wow, yes, when I first went skydiving." At first it was complete dread, but now I love it and it's excitement. So dread can turn to excitement. Yes. The person might say, well, I was in the military, and the first time I was skydiving, the sergeant threw me out the plane, kicked me out the plane. I didn't want to go. But after I did it, I'm like, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And the next time it was a little better. Okay, I was still a bit nervous and trepidatious, but I didn't have to be thrown out. All right, I was a bit reluctant, but the third time, I said, well, hang on a second. I want to do this. I want to conquer that dread. Yes. Wow, wow. So I started doing it deliberately. And when I started it deliberate, it changed from dread to excitement. Yeah. So I'm just giving an example of possibility how this is. That's a very physical example, but this could happen, say, with asking somebody out. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a dreadful thing. Only thing that makes it dreadful is our egos. You ask them out, if they say yes, they say yes. If they say no, they say no. End of story, right? You don't have to make it into a big deal, right? And many things like this. Many things can turn from dread into excitement. I mean, look at the roller coaster. Yeah. I mean, some people love it, some people hate it. Horror movies. Yeah. All depends on your frame of perception. Yeah. It's amazing to me. So it's very powerful. She's giving him there something that he can really use. Yes. Again, choice. If Boynal really listens, he's going to hear these things. But again, he's a bit in his bubble. Now, when people are in a bubble, you have to be very careful of popping that bubble, right? Because it's not really up to us. And we can really cause trouble if you pop a bubble for somebody. They have to really pop it from the inside, really. So again, she's giving him this repetition so that he sees that he's in a bubble, right? The opportunity to repeat. What an awesome conversation, by the way. Thanks immensely for messaging me. See, that right there is Biella being kind again, being considerate. Because now she's saying, oh, I'm getting value out of this. Yes, Boynal's getting value, but she's saying, I'm getting value, which now opens the door for him to continue with the conversation, which really is repeat again. Yes. uh, it's fantastic what she does, right? A huge gift for me. Yeah, and it is. I mean, it's not just a regular gift; it's a big gift, right? I mean, she gets so much out of it, and this is what many don't realize, right? This conversation seems like it's one way in terms of the benefit for Boynal, but there's fantastic value for Biella, right? And tons of it, right? I've mentioned it many times, right? I mean, she's gets well, maybe not in this particular way. So let me elaborate on it. Why is it a gift for her? Well, for one thing, it's the inordinate made manifest. Yeah. Now, when you say, but what's inordinate about this conversation? So far, uh, nothing in itself. But when you start to add up the little anomalies, right, it becomes a mystery. And when we'll see in the next chapter, when Biella starts to unpack this, and there's this big discussion with the group about this, why it's a gift, right? Of the anomaly, it's the inordinate made manifest. But not only that, though, right? Let's take it in a more ordinary sense, because here's this additional extra mystery that leads to the whole story arc, right? It's a big deal. This is a long-term mystery that changes the entire reality of everything, right? So it's a huge deal. This is the starting point of a huge deal. We don't know yet how big a deal it's going to be, but it will. The mystery will unfold. I mean, I'm giving you a little bit of not a true spoiler, but kind of giving a bit of a heads up of the series, right? But over time, this will be discovered how massive this was from the small starting point. The reason it's not being pointed out specifically as being a big deal is because of the skill that Biella has of recognizing the new nobility, but particularly in this case now, Biella, 'cause she's our focus, right? The skill that they have of paying attention to small things. There's in new nobility logic, there's no small or large. Everything is important, right? And so you can't say that because something is anomalous. Like I don't know, maybe Columbo's kind of long dead and gone now, but the series you can still watch it. I just remember it because it exemplified so many of these qualities. And it was at a time where I was figuring them out, and then I saw them on the TV series. I'm like, hey, wow, this is the stuff that I was working on, right? It was very cool. Columbo doesn't let go of that one point. And there's others too. I don't know, Monk or whoever that comes to mind, other detective series, right? It's a very common thing in the detective series. So you can see it. The good detectives, there's that one unexplained fact that doesn't fit, right? And so they have to rearrange the entire theory to make that fit fact. Whereas the other detectives, they just say, and they accept it for the rest and say, well, and they say, well, what about this? Yeah, who knows? Does it matter? We've got our guy. Yes, of course it matters because you can't make that fact fit. You have to make them all fit, right? And their integrity, in other words, says, I cannot accept it on mostly it fits. All has to fit. Yes. Same thing with Biella here, right? She says all the facts have to fit. I have to make it all work. I can't just say, well, mostly it's working. No, that's dishonest again, right? So it's this honesty of making it all fit is what leads to this bigger, bigger, bigger mystery that comes. This very profound mystery that gets resolved, right? And there's a big mystery that gets resolved, and there's even bigger ones, an unknown mystery that it leads to. So it's really cool, right? Longer term. But what's the regular, just in the ordinary sense, right? Where's the value for Biella in this with Boynal here, right? You might say, well, Boynal is getting listened to, he's getting heard, he's getting the opportunity to express himself, and through that, he's getting the opportunity to actually hear himself. One moment. Ah, nose is all blocked again. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Sometimes when I move a little bit away from the microphone, goes off a little bit. It's just the way it is. No, it's got a charging base, that it relays from, and it's Bluetooth, so it's out of range a little bit. So I'll come back in a second, in case you can hear me. I don't know why it is that my nose isn't all that blocked, but when I start talking, it gets blocked. It's very strange and peculiar. Odd, 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 odd. Who knows? Who knows? Here we go. Strange but true. Strange but true. Well, not as bad as yesterday. At least there's improvement. Little by little, we get there. I heard a message there while I was away. So I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming. All right. So I'm on this point here now uh of what does Biella get out of this, right? In a more regular sense. Like I say, Boynal, he gets to be heard, and he gets the value of hearing the repetition and realizing that he is repeating, and he gets a gradual, slow comfort, easing into a greater comfort zone where he can share things which he's not quite prepared to share in the first place, right? And just how we are, right? We want to get a bit more comfortable for the sensitive stuff to come out, right? And they do as we go on, right? He doesn't fully get there yet, but he does. All right, a lot of benefit in here for Boynal. There's more, but I'm more focused on this statement here. A huge gift for me, right? Because Biella's a new noble. She's not going to say that if it's not true, right? Everything she says always true, always, 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 right? So she's saying a huge gift. She didn't just say a gift, a huge gift. How? Biella gets to practice her capital H hearing. She gets to practice her capital D diplomacy. She gets to practice her expression, her sharing, her elucidation, her articulation. Right? She gets to practice being strategic, being sensible. She gets to practice her patience. She gets to practice her understanding, right? Which because she gives him these repeat backs, right? Which is essentially saying, if I understood you correctly, this is what I got, and then the person can say yes or no. Like in this case, she just did a repeat back here, right? Where she's saying, I know exactly where you are. Now, he hasn't quite expressed it in this particular way, but that's what a repeat back is saying it in your own words, right? And the point of a repeat back is to demonstrate comprehension. Now, isn't this valuable? This is always valuable because not always do you have the opportunity to express a repeat back. Then you've got to rely on trusting that you understand. Yeah, if I never test my understanding, how do I know I understand? I have no idea. I just might believe I understand. Try this especially with kids, right? Or try it with your partner, right? Your husband or your wife or boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever, right? And just try it with them. Say something to them and say, "Did you understand?" And they say, "Yeah." Say, can you repeat it back to me, please?" You are going to be most amused, and they will be like, and ask them honestly. No, you're not looking to trick them or belittle them or anything. Say, "Are you sure you really do?" And they say, "Yes." Okay, so I want to test something. Can you repeat it back to me? They are going to be horrified at how they are really unable to, for the most part. Yes, especially if you're talking about something in the abstract, a little bit more complex point there, right? Like this now, right? Where Boynal says, this that I do realize I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, and this oddity of this whole situation. Biella's actually doing a repeat back of what he said earlier as well, so putting it all together, right? So this is a profound skill, because the more you get to do repeat backs, and the person confirms that you do understand, the more confidence you can have that your understanding is at least an understanding, right? So when I'm not able to do a repeat back, I can say, well, in the past, I've been accurate and I've developed my skill. So there's a high probability that I'm accurate here. Of course, you're not going to assume that you are, but it's a high probability. So you can have some confidence in your understanding, right? So this ability to practice and build up that database, because again, statistically, if you do this 10 times, it doesn't really count very much, right? Even 100 times out of a lifetime, that's not a very high percentage. So there's no real limit to how much you can do this. I don't know, maybe after 1,000 or 10,000 times, but 1,000 opportunities like that, it will take you many years in regular life, right, to do this. So this is a huge gift when you have this opportunity to be able to do this comprehension testing in conversations of this nature, right? And she's getting many stuff. She's getting the huge gift though, because also it's a materialization of her intent, her focus, her attention, right? When she was focusing on the inordinate made manifest. There's so many gifts here, it's unbelievable. But just in a regular basis, when we interact with somebody, many assume, like Boynal could very much assume here, because Biella is giving so much value. She's clearly in a different world to him in terms of her sophistication and her moreness and her understanding and wisdom, even if you want to take it, all of this stuff, right? He could very easily assume, if you go by hierarchy paradigm, that there's an imbalance of value. Yes. And this happened, right? Somebody said they stopped interacting with me, and I asked them why, because they really enjoyed the interaction, and they kept saying how profound it was and how much they were getting out of it. But then they stopped interacting, and I said, "I'm keen to interact more. Why do you stop interacting?" And they said, "What? Because I cannot reciprocate." Ah, I was getting value. I was getting value. They stopped and they deprived me of the value I was getting. It's like Boynal here. If he stops and saying, "I can't reciprocate," and he stops interacting, that's going to cut off Biella's opportunity for all of this value that she's getting. Yes. So we have to really unhook from, again, a frame of perception. Yeah. To not think, because yes, I'm getting lots of value, that it's only one way. So is Biella. Her value is just different. She's getting tremendous value, right? Just because she has a more understanding about certain things, or greater sophistication, whatever this, right? Wisdom, whatever. Just because of that doesn't mean the value is one-sided. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all, right? I mean, just the value of sharing. Yes. And if it's beneficial to Boynal, how does that not benefit Biella? The joy of sharing something that is beneficial to somebody else. It's an incredible joy, right? So it's like saying, "Hey, I'm a patient," and to the doctor, sorry, doc, I can't reciprocate. I mean, assuming now you're not paying the doctor, they're volunteering to come and fix you up, right? You say, "Well, sorry, I can't accept your treatment here because I can't reciprocate." The doc says, "I don't care. You don't have to give me anything. I'm doing this for my own joy. I like to fix people up that are unhealthy, or, got some, like, broken bones or whatever, right?" See, we have to be careful of our frame of perception again. We assume in the hierarchical world, it's all about this value trading, right? And everything is a contract. Yeah. It's like, no, sorry, There's all these conditions and everything. Everything is this contract. No, in this for the new nobility, they don't have any contract. Their sharing is free. It's a gift. Why? Because they get the value in sharing. If you get value or not, it makes no difference to them. Of course, if you do, it's a bonus, but it doesn't matter. It's like me doing these lives, huh? I don't have to have people click like on it or anything like that. I don't even have to watch it. I get value just from doing it. Yes, I'm connecting with the universe, myself. I'm practicing expression. I'm practicing my discernment. I'm practicing my elucidation, my articulation. I'm practicing expression, being fluent and tons of things that I'm doing, right? Makes no difference. So this is, again, part of the whole deal, yeah, right? Very big deal. Very big deal. Are you still here, Norma? I'll refresh and see. Yeah, because sometimes those notices, the messages, I mean, they come automatically. Other times they don't. It's a very peculiar thing. And you see, I have to click on this on the video, and then it makes it go to the side like this, the messages. And then those are typically more real time than when it's underneath. All right. So this, he says, it's a huge gift for me, right? Camellia speaks up. These conversations are powerful. They affect. Camellia has a very distinctive way of speaking and voice. But listen to this. I just love this brevity of Camellia's. These conversations are powerful. And he says, why? Because he says they affect. Fantastic, right? If you understand the word affect, it's there. In other words, he's saying these conversations, they change you. They really make a difference, not just in your database, which normal ones do. They affect you, right? So you actually become different as a result. You're not just gaining information. Many profound conversations. All they really are, because there's not backup, there's not depth, there's not coming at it from different angles, multiple perspectives, etc., etc., etc. They just become data. And it sounds really cool at the time. Oh, wow, wow, wow. But you go away and you're really the same person, just with memories. Memories don't change us. Yeah. Not when it comes to personal change of character. To remember of something wise and profound, it doesn't change you. You have to apply it, right? So, but these conversations, they affect, because you can get immersed in them and you can really see the moreness involved. And that moreness has a consequence, because it opens your world up. It's not the thing itself that does, right? What's being said by Biella. No, the fact that she can say it, is able to say it, does say it. The fact that she has such, depth of being to her, this affects you. Why? Because it's saying this is possible. I never knew this was possible before, right? I mean, Cornelius has said this before, and Ursula too. I never imagined people could be this way, right? So see, they have effect. Yeah. Boynal responded. Again, still on his bubble, right? It's almost as if he doesn't hear what Biella is saying. Yeah, it's fascinating. And this is very common, by the way. I've dealt in many situations dealing with clients that are in a bubble of a problem, much like Boynal, right? It's no different. And they don't really hear what you say. Of course, there's a subconscious part that kind of does hear it, but they don't want to hear it. They don't want to respond to it, right? Because they're in that bubble. So you have to be patient. You have to be very, very patient, right? And disciplined. Boynal responded, and leave your ego outside, right? It's not about you, it's about them, right? That's not primary in capital H hearing. You're not listening to what you're going to say back to them, you're listening to them. A big difference. Very big difference, right? So if you do go to a therapist, pay attention. What are they listening to? Are they listening to you, or are they listening to what they're going to say back to you, for instance? Are they listening to how they're going to look, how they're going to appear, how they're going to present themselves, etc.? That's all listening to themselves, not really to you. Yes, they hear your words and they're responding that, if they know what you've said, but it's not where their intent is. Yeah. You have to pay attention. Boyno responded, I have been here before, and when I went with what I didn't know and into the unknown, it all brought me here and helped me heal within. When I am at one of those points again, it wants to know. I needed this conversation, and it is a great gift to me also. Thanks, brother. And thanks to you also, Biella. He's saying thanks to Camelius, right? Um, now, uh, but look at this, right? He says, it's all brought me here and helped me heal within. I am at one of those points again. Where's your problem? If you know this and you went with what I didn't know and into the unknown, right? He's saying he's done this before and it helped him heal within, right? And it's brought him here to the point where he's at now. And that even though it's not a fun point, it's helped him to heal. So why doesn't he do it again? This whole sentence is right. It's self-contradictory. It's like a square circle, right? Square circle, something that you can imagine, but you can't draw it. And I mentioned this thing with square circles before, a very profound story or example or explanation, right? Uh, why? Why does he not act? In other words, when we do capital hearing, we're hearing what's not said. What he hasn't said is the why as to why he doesn't do what he's saying that he knows to do, and it's kind of obvious. Why is it a block for him? Why is it a stuck? You know this, dude, and yet you're not acting. See? Something that he doesn't want to acknowledge to himself, something that's not in the open, right? So we need to persist till we know what it is, right? He says he needed this conversation and a great gift for me also. Excellent, Biella said. It gets easier and more exciting and gets to a point where we like the process of venturing into the unknown. Right. Now, again, Biella's intent here, what she says is very true. It's very important to understand. It's like I said with, jumping out of the plane, venturing into the unknown, right? We get to a point where we like it. Yes. First, it was dreadful, it was horrible, it was the worst thing ever, and you were terrified, but then you got to like it, right? So same thing with venturing into the unknown. Get to like it, become adventurous, right? But she's also saying this because she knows the conversation is not done yet. Yes. So she's keeping the conversation open. And she's keeping this point of venturing into the unknown, at least in the context here of his conversation, of him sharing. Him sharing what he's a bit uncomfortable sharing is like venturing into the unknown. So she's saying, just keep doing it. It'll get easier, right? And he's reluctant because he feels they're awful truths in some way, right? And when we are afraid of awful truths, this is a major obstacle. I see this time and time and again in the people that I've worked with, right? That if they're unable to face and deal with an awful truth, then they're stuck. When they do face and deal with that awful truth, inevitably it becomes an awesome truth. Right? If you think of the word awful, full of awe. See? So I call them awful truths too. When you really pay attention, they are awful truths. Yeah. Awful is just because we are connecting to it via fear. Our frame of perception is out, right? It's not an accurate one, not a good one, right? So when we have this inappropriate frame of perception, it's awful. Shift the frame of perception, and it becomes awful. Yeah, like the parachutist, yeah, or just somebody who's grown up and been taught never to be honest, right? By people who are into lies and disguise and all of this, right? And deep into the superiority paradigm, they see honesty as a weakness. No, so you have to overcome that conditioning. Yeah. So again, it takes a little bit of time sometimes, right? But she's making this opening for him, being very kind here. Biella shifted the focus of the interaction. The stories I started our conversation with are part of a larger story. It is fascinating to see how the individual stories fold into the larger one. Now she's expanded the frame of perception. Wow. Oh, so you shared stories, but they're part of a larger story. Wow. And now the individual stories fold into the larger one. Oh, so now from Boynal's point of view, he's now part of something more. Wow, how exactly, he's not maybe sure, but doesn't matter, right? She's again making space for him to share more, to feel like he is being contributing and valuable. In other words, that he has something to reciprocate with. Yeah. Very considerate of Biella, yeah. Very, very considerate and strategic, yes, and sophisticated. I'm glad to be part of your story, Boynal replied. I thought that was the case anyway, Biella. It seems personal how it is expressed with deep emotions, yeah? Which is, he's talking about like this year now, right? The things where she says, I know exactly where you are, right? And when somebody in the problem feels that you know their problem, then they share and they connect, right? To give you, you just have to wait now, person. I can't respond to you just now. Uh when you're standing in the pharmacy or the drugstore, right, and you're looking for a headache pill, you got a major headache, right, a migraine, and you stand there and there's other customers standing around and they're all at the shelf there, right? He said, "Man, I get these migraines and like I don't know what to take from them." And there's a doctor standing there, and the doctor says, "Well, this is the most powerful of these medications." Right? But then one of the other customers says, "Yeah, I hear you. I get it here, like right behind my ear, and then it shoots around and it goes up into the top ear, and then it spirals around." And they start explaining your headache exactly the way you have it, right? And they say, "Oh, I actually took this for it." Maybe the same thing as the doctor says. But the person who described your problem exactly is the one you're going to listen to for the solution, right? The doctor, yes, he's going, technically, this is the strongest, but it's not necessarily what you need. The other person had it exactly the same and they took something and it worked for them. Okay, thank you. Right? So we listen to somebody who's an expert at our problem, our specific problem. That person may not be an expert on headaches and pain and everything in general, but this particular headache they are an expert at. Now, is it absolutely sensible and appropriate to listen to them? Not necessarily, right? Because again, you may have the same symptoms but not the same cause. Right? So we have to take it under advisement. But that's a separate issue here now. Nonetheless, the point I'm making is Biella has shared in such a way that Boynal has some confidence that she understands what he's saying. This is why she does those repeat backs. Yes, she puts that there. Right. So she is very powerful, right? And he says this with deep emotions, right? And also, Boynal is concerned with hierarchy. He's in his mind, he knows what's going on, and he took a counseling course, right? So in his mind, he's on the same level as Biella. If he feels that Biella is his counselor and he's the one, the patient or the client, he'll stop listening. He's too entrenched in this idea that he knows what's going on, right? And if he has to confront this idea that he doesn't really know what's going on, he's going to stop listening. So by Biella sharing from the inside, she's allowing him to say that, you see, I thought that was the case anyway. You see, it seems personalized because of deep emotions. This is bringing them onto the same level, which for Boynal and hierarchy is very important. Yeah, he can listen now. It's kind of sad, and that's it doesn't actually help him in his listening because all he hears is what he already knows. When you do that, right? If he perceives Biella as knowing more, he'll start to hear, he'll open up, change his frame of perception, and he'll hear that which he doesn't know what she's talking about. And he'll ask, what do you mean? Like with anomalies, right? So it's a problem. Biella's aware of this, and she's trying to deal with it as best she can. It's very difficult to break that bubble when people get stuck like that, right? Look here, right. Biella felt certain there was more to Boynal and his story. She wanted to open up the flow. Exactly what I was saying. Now, I don't always remember the exact details of the story, but I can know what's coming just from the previous, right? I know this is going to come from how there's no other choice for her to do this, right? Because she knows, right? She wanted to open up the flow, connect to other areas. That's the amazing thing, how my life is. Everything is interconnected. I had no intention of connecting your story with my greater one. It just flowed from appropriateness. I'll explain. Now, now here she makes a statement which she could just leave, but because Boynal has opened up a little bitty and made some space for her to share, his story. Yes, I know it connected. She can now elaborate a bit more without running the risk of him feeling like he's treating her like that she's treating him like an idiot, right? So she says, when I went to sleep, I was still immersed in the story of another friend also at the crossroad. She's talking about Hayla's story, right? I was awake unusually early. I saw your message, and my story came literally to my doorstep, my capital S story, right? She's talking about the group and the delegates, Ursula, Camillus, everybody coming there to the doorstep, right? I was still a bit half asleep when we started. Those stories were still deep within me. I just ran with them as they are so completely applicable to you. It all flowed from there. Biella hoped the continual reference to story would connect with Boynal. And there's more, Biella laughed. There's always more. It is a frame in the larger story. Now, she says there's always more this time, preempting the group from chorusing. Nora and Aki started this thing whenever Biella says, and there's more, because it's kind of a habit. She gets very intense and it's very earnest and says, there's more. And then wow, there's always more, right? There's something they come to expect from Biella. But she preempts them a little bit because she doesn't want this to shift the attention away, right? It is a refrain in the larger story. The universe works through people when we are listening, doesn't it? It brings us who we need, right? Says Boynal now. Right? This is Boynal replying. The universe works through people when we are listening, doesn't it? It brings us who we need, he says. And the more we are in the now, the more these phenomena seems to align. This sounds very, very profound from Boynal. Boynal, if you have this profound understanding, why are you stuck on such a simple thing? Right? Again, he's got the words, but not the ability to apply them. Right? Sounds great. And yet you're stuck on something so simple. Yeah. Or at least apparently so simple. Yeah. Biala explained. The greatest story has taken many turns, many new developments. I have been thinking deeply about what was important right now. I had been thinking deeply about what was important right now, what was an essential element in the greater story, right? What is perhaps missing? Ah, and not focused on enough. I was done with my thinking, waiting, looking out for what is to come. When we started, I had forgotten about that, being half asleep, then became consumed in the conversation. But now it's all coming together. I love it when a circle comes together. This is like an expression of Bialis, like in the A team, the colonel always says, I love it when a plan comes together. Well, Biella says, I love it when a circle comes together. She sees the greater connectedness of things, right? Biella laughed happily. And yes, Boynal, to being in the now. And it seems to being in the now. So before we go to Boynal's response here, this point of this greater story, right? What is perhaps missing? Biala was reflecting on the story that started with uh, her chatting to the other aspirants, right? In chapter 1, where she watched the arrivals coming, and she said, what if I were to wake up on a foreign world without my memories, and I could only remember one concept? What would that one concept be? And they have this nice deep conversation about that, right? And a very cool start to the story. The chapter 1 is called Just One Word, right? As a result, but then from there, yes, she interacts with Shah, but then in chapter 3, it's it's uh, it's starting with she's waiting for the delegates, right? In that interim, she gets this mandate from from admin. It says, hey, you got to show these delegates from these other worlds what it is to be a new noble, to show what it is to be a new noble, right? And then things happen, and there's moreness, right? And the interactions with Camillus, which is outside of the usual interactions. Then there's the interaction with Ursula, and this totally unusualness of a delegate saying, "Hey, I want to be an aspirant," and not just later, but and a particular aspirant like Ursula, very successful. She's going to be the next leader of the world, everything. Say, no, none of that. I'm going to stay here now. I'm not going back, right? I'm from here now, right? She completely takes this
complete step all the way. Very unusual, right? Very profound, very anomalous, but potent, right? It's not truly anomalous. I mean, it's this because there's a sensibility to it, but in the pattern, it's anomalous, right? And then we have, that it leads up to the herb, accepting the new nobility, and Camelius inadvertently becoming an aspirant, right, along with Ursula, also anomalous. And then you've got Haylor and Haylor's story, all the stuff added together. She's saying, wait a second, there is a story here, a capital S story, right? It's a story that we're reading, of course, right? But she's saying there's still something missing in this as a story. It has all the elements of a capital S story, but in a story like this, typically there's a greater mystery to be resolved. Right? Now, she doesn't think this consciously at the time, but she was just thinking something is missing. And now Boynal comes with his anomaly, and he's bringing this greater mystery because he's also connecting it to the mystery of Haylor a little bit, right? And the whole mystery of these particular delegates being so different, right? So now it all starts to work together. And Biella saying, in her mind, she's got this monist philosophy that she lives by. So she's saying, there's got to be more. And him coming, and she's realizing and saying it here, that she realizes that Boynal is the start of this monist that completes the story, the greatest story, like in the context of, if you're looking at this as a book editor, up until this point, the editor might say, well, you've got a lot of interesting stuff here, but it's not connected to something that's larger, that moreness, that mystery that needs to be resolved, which makes for a greater story. Because the editor will say, well, this is obviously book one over here, and there's a lot more to come. We need a connecting theme to connect all the books together, right? Otherwise, just kind of a series of random things. So how does it all connect together? The greater capital S story, right? And comes with Boynal bringing this mystery of, him saying stuff like visas, or money issues and stuff like this, and the aspartame and all this that doesn't exist in the agglomeration, and yet he's a delegate. So, all right, maybe he's in a world outside, but there would be a reference to it, and with some information on it. So something's going on, right? And it's not only Boynal, but to some extent, later they say, well, it's Boynal and Haylor, right? And they really look into Haylor's planet, but Haylor goes back and they discover the same thing, that is similar to Boynal, right? They investigate later. Right. So this is very powerful. What Biella references here, right? It's the start of this greater long-term mystery. And Boynal now replies to her. And in this, it seems to be bringing me to a point of a cycle also that I wasn't willing to see. And we have, in this chapter we haven't had this before, but from earlier in the book, these are Biella's private thoughts, right? Good. Now we are getting somewhere. Internal reflection, and this is quite important, at least for me as a writer and author. I wanted to show moreness from the inside. I've read plenty books where you have characters that have tons of moreness, but we just see it on the outside, where they just say it and we're seeing it from them. I don't know how they think, how they connect to things, how they start. Now, Biella is also unique in that she explains how she's thinking. So we don't need to have this inside thinking that often, right? It's not necessary because Biella makes this effort to explain. But every now and then we get these glances inside Biella. And I feel this is very important because I wanted to have somebody who is a moreness character, who's a together character, that one that we can understand where they're coming from. In other words, that we can emulate, learn from, right? And not emulate as in copy. That's why I use the word emulate rather than copy, right? To emulate, which means you take mostly what they do, but you also make it your own. Yeah. So this is very powerful. And I thought this is very unique, Biella, as a moreness character, right? As somebody that you all can say, wow, I would like to be Biella. But so often with characters that you think this, it's not possible because we don't get the reality of what they are inside and how they come to be it. Yes. So this is a little small thing that It's very important, makes a big difference. Biella considered. It is the capacity to step back and wait when we don't have that feeling of complete wanting to do whatever it is and waiting for that wanting to come again from wherever. That is the trust part. Yeah. So this needs to be capital W wanting. Yeah. Right. Because it's more than just a regular little wanting. It's capital W wantings are wantings that you've looked at very carefully, right? They're very similar to intents. They're like that next step away from intent, right? They're the motivation that leads to intent. That is the trust part. Biella added, I'm listening. As if it wasn't obvious before. And particularly, she understands human psychology. If you're sharing and you're sharing more and you're sharing more, right? At some point, you think, well, am I imposing? Yes. And also, from experience that people can only listen up to a certain point and then they sort of, they don't have the energy and the focus and the attention to continue listening. So Biella says this to let him know that she is listening, right? Very precisely. And to open the door again for him. Yes. But even though she shared a bit of her personal stuff, she's saying, I'm listening, right? To let him know it's not about her, it's about him, right? Listening to ourselves. Now, he takes that kind of in an interesting way here, right? Again, what she says is, I'm listening to you, right? Especially with the ellipsis at the end here, right? And the front, right? I'm listening. She's connecting it to him, right? Because remember, he's seeing this in type, right? So she would have typed that. Yeah, well, without the inverted commas, I guess she would have typed it like this, yeah. Uh, but he takes this uh, in this way of listening to ourselves. Right? It's not logically connected. It's like a bit of a jump there. What is happening? This is Boynal's Boynal's greater self, his moreness self, trying to communicate with his conscious self. Yeah, with the self that's in the bubble. Yeah. If we learn to listen to ourselves, what he said there, this is meant for you. Listening to ourselves, right? He agree. Yes, listening to ourselves is important, but is he doing it? Not really, right? And again, when you pay attention to what people say, you hear more, right? And they say stuff like this, like they're saying it to themselves, and they don't realize it. It's just too fantastic, and it's too wonderful, and it's too awesome, and just it's magical. It truly is, right? And he jumps right now. Look, he connects it. He puts a comma there. He doesn't put a full stop and then starting a new sentence. Listening to ourselves. May I ask? Because I don't know if I'm overlooking something here. Yeah. And again, he keeps the comma going. It's all one sentence, right? I didn't change this grammar. This is how it was written at the time. I told my son I was going to be leaving the area. And yesterday, when I went to pick him up at his mother's, he came out chewing gum. He knows I don't like this as it has aspartame in it. Can this also be the universe saying to me not to leave this area? No, it's the universe saying to you, don't get hung up on such small things. This is part of why he ended up in the loony bin, as he called it, in the mental institution, because he's overly hung up by stuff like this. It's too big a deal. Yeah. And he needs to learn to let go and chill. He's too connected to the value of his own opinion. And he overestimates his own opinion because of insecurity. Right? It happens all the time, right? He wants to be more. He's overly ambitious, in other words. So he elevates himself, right? And it's like, yeah, man. So there's a bit of aspartame in it. Big deal. It's like not the end of the world, yeah. Right? One little thing like this is not a reason for you to stay. Yeah. Right. But anyway, it's part of the greater mystery. The word aspartame roused everyone's interest. While Biella did a search for its meaning, Boynal said, I feel trapped with my feelings of abandoning my son and the bigger picture. Now, here we get the issue, right? This is the first time now that he's mentioned this. He's mentioned the son before, and now he's mentioned this particular thing where he's needed to correct his son. Like if he's not there, somehow his son is going to, right? Kids can grow up by themselves. They don't really need their parents. It's a big myth. Yeah. I mean, they're helpful, the parents, but they'll find it somewhere else typically, right? Or figure it out for themselves. So don't overestimate yourself as a parent. Please, all parents, your kids come through you, not from you. So realize this, trust them to learn on their own. If you want to really help them, provide them tools for learning. Don't tell them what to do or not to do, like in this case, right? Why not eat the aspartame? And if the kid says, well, I don't care, so then say, all right, short term versus long term. You might not see a negative effect now. Educate them as to why, and then have them make their own decision. Right? Right. So he says this though. I feel trapped with my feelings of abandoning my son. You're going somewhere else. You're not abandoning your son. You're just not going to be close to him. You can connect to him through the internet, for heaven's sake, right? So again, see, it's his guilt feelings that are coming into the issue here. Right. And he's feeling guilty because he overestimates himself. And it's an ongoing theme, this overestimation of himself, right? It's why he ended up in a mental institution, right? Because he was with chemtrails. He calls them chemtrails. Right? He made up, got into that whole conspiracy and things, and this is part of the conspiracy mindset. They overestimate their ability to perceive accuracy, and they aren't able to see the flaws in why it's a conspiracy theory, right? They just go by that obvious logic. So there's a problem with his thinking here in a big, big, big way, right? So anyway, Illumina added to the group. She's just commenting to them now. We are starting to get somewhere now. She's echoing Biella's, right? Good. Now we are getting somewhere, right? Just a repeat here. Because it's a very, very important shift, this, where he says, right, I feel trapped with my feelings of abandoning my son. Is that acknowledging the guilt, in other words, right? And how it's trapping him. Uh, and Biella adds here, aspartame was an artificial sweetener which has not been used in centuries, not since the time of the young man. Important, important there. There had been controversy as to its effect on health. Biella informed the group. Now we have a parallel theme, a manifestation of anomaly to illustrate our theme of understanding anomalies. Yeah. So already she's been saying to Boynal that, hey, you're stuck. You don't know which way to go. The only way out of that is, well, first be impeccable with all, do what you can do. Then if you're still stuck, then you look to the anomalies, right? But now here is an actual anomaly that is for the purpose of the group to illustrate, and the delegates, I mean, most in the group, like the aspirants and the other new nobles, they'll know what this means. But, like Camillus or the other delegates, they won't know what this is necessarily, right? And they may get an idea, but here's a nice, actual, very clear example of it, right? A manifestation of anomaly to illustrate our theme of understanding anomalies. Beside the obvious need for something to break the circle Boynal is spinning in, we now have an actual anomaly. I have been suspecting something like this. Illumina also. We have a mystery in time, an anomaly out of time. Illumina, would you please explain in between my comments to Boynal? I do not wish to lose the connection to him by delaying my responses in order to explain. Okay? Now, there's some measure of delay, right? But after that, the person on the other side feels that there's a disconnect, right? And she wants to keep the connection. Now, he takes some time to type in that, right? But she wants to keep that rhythm going, right? So this why um, Illumina is now going to step in and explain this anomaly. Now, for both Illumina and Biella have seen this to mean something more. They've already suspected it. This is kind of a confirmation, right? Now it's putting all the things together, seeing the bigger pattern. Happy to, said Illumina, nodding towards the com where messages from Boynal awaited. Biella replied to Boynal, a big jump. It is actually anomalous. Is it actually anomalous that he was doing this? She uses the opportunity to get more information about this, to open things up at a discussion, to maybe get Boynal to realize that, he's maybe coming at this from a bit of an overestimation of himself and making too big a deal of it, and it's not the reason for him to stay there, etc., etc. but also she is at the same time as opening the door for discussion on this and awareness on it on Boynal's part. She's also opening the door to have him now start to connect to anomalies, which he hasn't. He's ignored it up until now, right? So he's asking him a direct question, right? He doesn't respond to it immediately. He says, but I know his mother will not look after his bed interest. And here we come to a second problem. Yes. Yes, he feels guilty for leaving his son, but he also doesn't believe the mother will look after his bed interest, well, which you would assume it means best, right? But it's anomalous that the com does not correct us. Yes. Now, maybe the boy has bedwetting problems, and and because there's stress and tension between the parents or whatever, and subconsciously this is Freudian slip in a sense here, right? We don't know necessarily, right? But the fact that the com didn't correct it, the autocorrect didn't correct it, because that doesn't really make sense, just like Grammarly or whatever would correct that, yeah. So it's anomalous, yeah. uh Boynal's message definitely had bed in it. Curious. Or would have seemed to be best interest, or perhaps, right? Again, this is the humility of the nobility. They don't assume, right? Maybe it did mean bed interest. Yeah, in this, like I said, if the boy had a problem with bedwetting, yeah. Um, this was fascinating. Also, by the way, don't assume because like kids do wet the bed that they have an issue or a problem. Yeah. Not at all. I mean, and I'll tell you a story. I was 12 years old, and by the time I was 12 years old, I'd been spending 2 years already focusing on awareness and understanding and all this, right? And I dealt with the whole issue and drama of that my parents' divorce and the big scandal. Remember, I was saying the other day about this will either make me or break me. And it was this magical gift for me, turning a disadvantage into an advantage, right? Which is always my strategy. But anyway, so I had myself together. I had no problems. I dealt with stuff. I couldn't. Bullying wasn't an issue. None of this, right? I had a social side where I was a bit of a numbskull. I was a 12-year old in my social side. This is something I had from when I was 6 years old already. The social side and the private side. Private side, not private, just private. Sorry, not secret, just private. If somebody wanted to ask, and they did ask, I would have told them. It wasn't secret. It just something I didn't volunteer to share because it wouldn't always be seen as appropriate. In the culture that I lived in, kids that were too smart and showed up the grown-ups, they 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 did not have a fun time, right? It was very negative way. The parents, the adults would take it out on you, right? They didn't want to be shown up, so it was very dangerous to be more. Right? Hence the private side. Anyway, nobody asked, by the way, ever. So but anyway, the story I'm trying to make is about assumptions and again, frame of perception. We just assume if kids went to bed that they got some problem, some emotional trauma. No, not at all. Right. So I went to go. Our family was friends with another family. Like my brother was best friend with a boy in his class, and I was friends with uh, there was a girl and a younger boy than the oldest boy. My brother was older than me, right? So a lot of overlap there. Anyway, and this family, the kids, they were a little bit into the hierarchy paradigm, right? Like especially the older one, my brother's best friend. He was always into these put downs, right? Making these kind of clever comments which would put you down in some way, right? Just that was just his thing. They were a bit insecure because, well, the father was a mechanic, and they wanted to be a bit higher in the status, so they were a bit insecure. Anyway, long story. Nonetheless, here's the story, right? So now I'm sleeping over at their house, right? And I'm sleeping over in the room of the two boys, right? They made an extra bed. I'm sleeping in one of the beds. So I had this dream. I never had it before, and I never had it since. I dreamed that I was having a pee, and it was this most fantastically big powerful pee, and I'm like in the dream, wow, I've never had a pee like this. This is great. This is glorious. It was really a glorious pee, right? This massive, great, big, powerful stream. It was just felt fantastic. And like, man, this was really cool. Of course, when I woke up in the morning, my whole bed was wet. Right? Now, if I could have chosen the worst possible time and place to wet, and I didn't have a history of wetting the bed. It had been ages since that before, right? Uh, this would be the absolute worst possible time. Yeah. So I'm like, holy moly, right? Anyway, so just how I got out of it is I waited till they left the room, right? I mean, and then I got up and I covered the bed with a cover, made it all nice and neat, like I'd sort of made up the bed. And I went to the bathroom and I took off my underwear, which was wet, and I rinsed it out and dried it as best I could and put it in my pocket and just went from there, right? And you know, in those days, okay, the mother would come and later do their mother was a very sweet lady. She was very frail health wise and didn't say much. She was a very sweet person. She never said a word because it never came out. Because if it had come out, the boys would have teased me mercilessly about this, but it never did. But anyway, the point I'm making is two things, right? That when there's apparent calamity, a little bit of strategy, and you can take care of it, right? That's all I need. That's a little bit of patience, right? Just like lay in bed till they went, which, okay, it was a bit awkward, like, hey, come on, get up, all right. But then when the opportunity was there, I took it, right? So, but a strategy coupled with patience, right? I had to have that patience and also a bit of independence of being, right? To resist the pressure of them saying, come on, we got to go, right? So I had to be a bit awkward, as it were, right? But I was able to do that. I was aware of it, so it was not an issue for me. It was no big deal. But it always stuck with me because it was kind of anomalous, right? And I guess it's to make this point, or at least one of the reasons, that don't assume frame of perception, right? I didn't have any trauma or any hang-ups or anything. I was an exceptionally well-adjusted kid. So you could, if that had, ordinary from an ordinary psychology point of view, oh my God, they would have had a field day with us, and it would have been completely wrong. Yeah. So be careful. And I think this applies in this case with Boynal too. I'm sorry I didn't remember that story when I was talking to Boynal, but anyway, right? It would have been very useful here. To just don't assume, man. Don't assume. There's more going on than we know. Really listen, 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 right? I mean, if somebody had really listened to me, I would explain, oh, it was just a fantastic dream. And that dream, it stayed with me for a long time because of the physical sensation of it, right? That typically in dreams, you sort of, but you don't have a real physical sensation. This was an absolute physical sensation. It was very cool. I mean, it was a wonderfully cool dream. Okay, I ended up wet in the bed, but doesn't matter. The dream was very cool. So anyway, I guess in my mind there wasn't the distinction between the dream reality and regular reality. Yeah, and maybe I made the distinction then after that because I had to. Anyway, something to explore. I just thought of that kind of now. All right, so Boynal says about this best bed interest, not best interest, right? So I'm just saying we have to be very careful, at least when we assume looking after best interest, right? We have to trust kids to be more sensible. They are a lot more sensible than we give them credit for. Yeah. Illumina said, it seems if we pay attention, Boynal's messages aren't being sent with the same level of error correction we expect. That, combined with the word usage, is leading us to an interesting speculation. She's now commenting on Biella's point that there's something anomalous going on, not just with Boynal's refusal to see the obvious in his own statements, but aside from that, there's a completely separate anomaly, like this word aspartame and visa and this, right? And the error corrections. It's one more little point, right? Biella replied to Boynal, it may it may be it also what's holding you where you are, that connection to the micromanaging. It is difficult. If you see the situation with a mother that way, if you do not have that trust, it is difficult. Biella's making her best effort to apply capital D diplomacy. Now, capital D diplomacy is saying the truth in the most palatable, considerate, kind way possible. Yes. And this is what she's trying to do here now. Yes. Again, without overstepping her boundaries or interference. Uh, it's very tricky. It's capital diplomacy is an art, right? But you can see this now where she says it in this kind and delicate way here, right? Uh, it may be also what's holding you where you are. She's giving a very particular reason, which he's now obviously looking for. He said it many times that he's stuck, right? That connection to the micromanaging. This is kind of assuming things to be. She's making a statement. Well, with this aspartame, it's kind of a duh thing, right? So it is difficult if you see the situation with a mother that way. If you don't have trust in the manager and the mother to then it's going to be difficult, right? The trust, right? So she's just again doing a repeat back, yes, but maybe adding it in a saying it in a way that oh yeah, you know what, I am kind of micromanaging. Yes, I don't trust the mother, right? I mean, he says he didn't trust the mother, but now it's just adding emphasis to that. Very cool. Illumina continued. Now, Illumina and Boynal, Venus, Biella. Illumina and Biella are Biella's responding to Boynal. Illumina is responding to Biella's request to explain about the anomaly that's outside Boynal's internal anomaly of being stuck, right? This greater anomaly. Illumina continued. If we add the mystery of the planet he's from, that there is so little information on it, to the odd language, to the money problems, the travel restrictions and need for visas, we have a puzzle. Boynal said, best interests. He corrects it, right? So their speculation was correct. They get that confirmation. But I am torn between here and somewhere else. The vibration here is very low. Yes, we know that. You've said that many times now already, right? One more repetition. Biella responds to him. But there is going to come a point when you'll have to let go, one way or the other. Either have to let go of the draw or let go of staying where you are. Your own, again, she's just saying the obvious. You know, so often the obvious isn't obvious until it becomes obvious. Now, he said this and it's obvious to us, but Biella repeating it lets him hear the obviousness of what he's been saying. People don't listen to themselves, not in this way, right? Your own awareness and spiritual growth will always take precedence in the end. You can only do so much for your son. At some point, he too will be on his own. Yes? It is not as if you will be disconnected from him. I mean, contact via comms will still be there, via the internet, in other words, right? And in the original conversation, that would have been internet, not com. Yeah? Just that's enfolding it into the story to make it story appropriate. Yeah. And now Illumina continues. Between Biella and I, we don't know of any world like this or any other which has societies this committed to recreating that period in old Earth's history. Now she jumps a little bit there to say we've she's assuming on Biella's behalf, because Biella kind of mentioned it a little bit, or at least implied it, that this could be a reenactment. Yes. So they're looking at multiple perspectives, not just to assume it's a mystery. That's an explanation for it, possibly, right? It may be a reenactment society, but there wouldn't be the travel restrictions, right? I mean, you may be recreating the time of the young man as as a reenactment society, and there are those that do this, like people reenact the Civil War or whatever, right? Or Roman reenactments. Uh, but it's quite a big thing, by the way, if you're not aware of it. When I had the sword and knife store, we used to sell lots of stuff for the reenactors, right? And like specifically the Romans and the Civil War guys, right? But again, if there are reenactment societies in the agglomeration or even in a planet new, it wouldn't be visas, right? That's something that's local and internal. So that's sort of long gone, as they mentioned before. Boynal, I know this, and it is the fear, but it may be facing this fear that will bring about better, of course. Again, talking to himself. Look at the of course. It's for him. It's for him. It's is one self talking to his other self. This is fascinating how that works. Yes, said Biella. I don't wish to assume anything, but now I have another small story for you concerning this. Illumia held off from adding to her thread. It could wait until after Biella's story. How the two of them are working with each other. Again, it's that greater awareness, right? Illumina is sharing something. She's talking to the delegates and the aspirants while Biella's responding to Boynal. Now, yes, they're not talking over each other so that the 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 uh, the group, the aspirants and the delegates, they can hear both, right? They can have two parallel stories. But she's aware enough to hear this coming and not just to be consumed and waiting for the sound of what Biella says, but what Biella says. So even though she's talking, she's also paying attention, right? Very powerful. Right. So now she's going to tell the story. I think I'm going to end here, yeah, because this is like the last part of the chapter, and that will work very nicely with tomorrow, like overlap, right? No, very cool, very, very, very cool. Lots of fun stuff here. So let's see. Norma popping again, in and out and in again. Oh, I love it, Norma. I love it. I love it. You have sound. Oh, brilliant. You have sound. So you can. So Norma, before I go, yeah, right? Do you? Oh, I was reading the comments in the wrong order here. Norma, on the big computer, big C as you call it. I love that you call it big C. On big C, do you see the screen share of the story? And then in the corner, you see my the video of me, and then on the right hand side of the screen you see where the comments are. Do you see all that? I'm keen to know. I'm keen to know. All right, well, you can respond another time, Norma. I do have a few things to do. I have an interview for hmm, a podcast interview. They just called me out of the blue, want to interview me. They interview life coaches and authors and things like that. So it's coming up a little later in the afternoon, but I want to get all my shipping and stuff done so that, I'm ready and done. I had an appointment earlier and I was sick at the time and I forgot all about it. And they called me, "Oh, we're calling for your interview." I'm like, "What? What? I didn't even know what day it was." So like, I feel bad. I feel bad that I don't want to. I don't want to miss it the second time because they made an effort to call me back and reschedule. So it's pretty cool. So it's a short interview, but if if it goes, and then I have connections, and they usually give it. I'll share it as a post in group, and people can go and listen to it if they want to. Um, Is there anything else? Oh, okay. I'm not sure if Norma's here or not, but I'm keen to know, Norma, that when you watch this on the big C, because you didn't have the speakers before, so you couldn't hear it. If you can see my video and see the screen share, the text of the story, right? Because on the phone it doesn't show you the little video, but on the computer it should do that. All right, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I love it, Norma. I love you too, and we'll connect again tomorrow. And maybe Venus on the train today, and they should be back before tomorrow. So maybe we'll see, depending what time they leave today, right? The train journey is 17 hours, so of course it depends when they leave. But maybe we'll see Bina tomorrow. Maybe we'll see Bina tomorrow. I sure hope so. I sure hope so. I do miss Bina, as I'm sure you all do as well. I know you do, Norma, and you know. She said she misses coming. She misses coming too, She misses. So she loves you too, Norma. All right. So, all right, we'll stop and we'll see tomorrow. We're right here on this last part of the young man and his heart, little final story there. Very powerful story. Very, very powerful little story. Right? Very important that the universe takes us on paths that we don't imagine, but we have to be open to them. We have to be open to them. And it's also, it's not mentioned in Biala's story, but I hope I remember tomorrow. It's a story about deeper love, at least from the young man's point of view. True, real, deep love. Right? So I'll explain tomorrow. All right. On that note, I shall end the meeting. So end meeting for. Bye bye, everybody.